All right, we are live.
All right. Welcome everyone. We are doing a stream today. This is not an incubator weekly. This is just pretty much live coding and planning. We are working on IPFS, and let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see.
Yeah, and this is going to be probably my next big project that I'll be taking on now that the end-to-end tutorial and a lot of the front-end examples are built. This is going to enable us to do some cool new things with Dash, and also can help us enhance these previous front-end examples with new hosting capabilities and options that are more decentralized and true to a Web3 type of development.
Yeah, so in some ways, it's an extension of the tutorial series that you've been doing, but we're making a kind of a clean break as far as project goes, just because they are different enough. But the overall idea with this is, Anthony, do you want to do you have a link to your tutorial? Either the GitHub or the post on your blog.
Yeah, I'll show
that you can send me, and we'll show as well.
So this is the link for the blog post. It is right. Oh, both got at the same time. And then the actual examples is at my own repo dash.examples.
Yeah.
And then all under the AJC Web Dev brand right now, but I keep my GitHub pretty clean and my blog as maintained as possible. So hopefully this will be easy for people to use and access if they need them.
Yeah, I'm going to open up the GitHub one because I want to show this while I'm talking about it. Okay, and switch view here. Why is it not bringing up my screen view here?
I got it for you.
Okay.
You should increase the font a couple sizes.
Let's go one more. Two more.
Sorry. Let's do that's what we want. Yeah.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right. So yeah, basically we have this this tutorial that we go through, and the whole idea with adding IPFS is at the end of this, you can see we have a local host URL that we pretty much end with, and you get this up on localhost, but I want us to be able to get it all the way up onto the internet using IPFS. We discussed the reasons behind like the benefits of IPFS in some of our incubator weekly shows. I want to get to the point where we have the most trust minimized, I guess you would say, way of having deployed applications in Dash, because as we all know, like when you're running a traditional web URL, when you have a traditional app, it's hosted on a web URL, and IPFS can help with some aspects of the centralization of that by nature. So that's the whole idea, is that we would have a way to make decentralized applications using Dash platform, but then hosting them on IPFS. And I don't know if it's a perfect solution, but I think it's the right direction. So as we go through this process, we will kind of learn what are the trade-offs that we're making here. Can we make it even better? Is there a way to make decentralized applications even more secure? And again, I don't like the decentralized term necessarily because it misses the point. Basically, what you want is secure applications, and decentralization is a means to that security. So we do have another project. Actually, I switched that screen too quickly. Let me just show this other project that we may end up using this.
You shared that link to me in the private chat so I can keep track of this one.
Yes. Here we go. This is our decentralized dynamic application infrastructure project on Trello. And the result of this project is that we have a repo that has, I'll just switch right to it, I guess. This is the repo that came out of this project. So as you can see, there's kind of a long history of this. And at the end of the day, this is an SDK that and process. I actually need to look into this a little bit more. So I'll be doing this probably throughout this stream to see what this offers us, because this is going to be mostly a planning stream about how we're going to fit this part of the deploy step essentially into the tutorial. So this may do kind of exactly what we want. And I know you have some notes from our last conversation, Anthony, when we had that discussion with Walker about IPFS, and we went through Daniel's document on IPFS as well. So we've got a lot of different resources to work with. And I think the goal of this is to kind of boil this down into the best, like take the best parts of each resource that we have and come up with a reasonable extra steps to be appended to the end of the tutorial that get us to the deploy step of this application that we're building in the tutorial. So in fact, do you want to go ahead, and is now a good time for you to share the notes that you had on?
Yes.
Yeah, like basically it was Walker made some notes after our call, and go ahead and share your screen and then let's go through those as well.
So I just kind of dumped these into a gist because this was going from us just kind of back and forth through Discord messages. And I'll make sure he has credit for kind of laying this out. So he just gave us kind of like a step-by-step thing of what we could do and one thing we could build. So a lot of these terms are things we went over in the episode, but we would use it as a SID repository. So the CID is the content identifier for anything you put on IPFS. And he gave us an demo idea for like a minimal HTML JavaScript. And this involves using Helia. So this is something that I have not used previously. And
which is, I think, just like he said, it's the rebranded, it's rebranded IPFS JavaScript client, as far as I understood.
Yes, which I had not gotten to use at all. So this is still something that I'll be kind of learning, because when I was learning IPFS last time, I was starting with just like the baseline of like how to actually run an IPFS node on my computer. So I had the desktop, and then I was learning the CLI, and then I got into pinning. And so that all kind of takes you a different direction from like, how do I implement this with like their JavaScript thing? But it was on top of my mind. It's like, this is the next thing I want to learn. Like, how do I actually get there? Because I'm sure this has been around so long. They must have some nice stuff in this library, because IPFS just has a massive community. But this is kind of their hello world example. So you have create Helia strings, which I'm assuming is how you set the type for string. And then you're going to add this, and you have something called an immutable address. So I guess it's immutable because it turns it into the content ID. That's probably what's happening there.
Okay, so, and one thing that we're going to have to do here my intention with this is we want to use IPFS and the tooling and infrastructure that's, projects that have been built around IPFS mainly for deploying static sites. And when I look at this and I see strings, I wonder, and I see JSON, I wonder if this is kind of duplicating basically what Dash Platform is doing, but on.
So this is what I think this is what we're going to want to do in terms of what you just explained about adding a deploy step to the tutorial. I have a pretty clear idea of how to do that, actually. So this is my tutorial that I wrote back in June of 2022 when I was working at QuickNode. So here it's basically what I'm doing is I'm just using the IPFS CLI to publish a repo, and the repo contains the HTML. So all we would need to do is basically, if we want to use like a React or I would probably use Astro for like a static site generator would be good for this. You would just have a build folder that is the output of your website, and then that build folder is the thing that you're uploading. And this is, how things like Netlify and Vercel work when you're just working with static files. You have a build step, your npm run build or whatever, then that gives you, and then you point it to a folder. This is the exact same thing. You could just do this with IPFS using the CLI. So you see here the step, this is where you add it, and then it creates your content IDs here. So what I'll probably do for what you want us to do here is go through this again, and just wire it to the Dash examples that we already have. And then you can have a deploy step for each of them.
Yep. Yeah, because I know you can use IPFS for a lot of different things. And the Helia project, like again, for the viewers here, this is just like basically pair programming and pair planning. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that we don't have figured out yet. And there's a lot of resources that we have to kind of go through to see what is the best approach here. And that's why we're both on the show right now, is because like neither of us really have the answer. We want to figure this out together because we have two great technologies with a lot of ecosystems, particularly IPFS has a lot of ecosystem built around it. And we need to know and figure out which parts of this are good for what our goals are. And our goals are basically, I want to make it easy to build applications where it's basically account-free applications, I guess, to use, that is one of the things that I hold near and dear is I want the web to be permissionless again. I think we went through this big phase of Web 2 where everything became permissioned again. Maybe not again, it probably always was. Like Web 1 was that golden age where it seemed like at least it was easy to spin up a website, host an HTML file on your internet connection, and you were just, you were hosting your own stuff, and it was nice and easy. And then it became more complicated because all these corporations came in offering these great services, but now you're back into permissioned land, and you're making accounts at Netlify, and you're making accounts at AWS, and you have a lot of things to go through, and you can't just code some things and then run some commands and now you've got a live website anymore, it seems like. And I want to get back to that day. Like I wasn't really around in Web 1 days. I was around, but I was a young kid and not really doing
the first thing I did on the internet was Neopets.
Geopets?
Neopets. So Neopets was the thing in the mid 90s, and it was kind of a combination of like it was a website where you would have like Neopets, so like kind of like Pokemon, but not exactly, because there was just like there's games on it, but then there's also parts of it where apparently you could get into like messing around with like CSS and HTML like on a part of it. This is kind of like with MySpace. Like some people use MySpace, they just create a profile. Then other people use MySpace and they're like, wait a second, I can actually mess with the website itself. So I never got to those steps in any of those, but that was my first time really using something on the internet that I can remember,
Yeah.
And then I got into message boards in like 2003 or so. And both the IGN video game message boards and then this like random movie website message board. So
Yeah. And so
that's where Web 2 is kind of getting started.
Yeah, that sounds like Web 2. I don't know. I may have this romanticized version of what Web 1 really was, but I would like it to have been something where an individual can create an HTML file and then host it on just their normal computer. And if your computer was off, then people weren't able to reach your site, but your computer could be the server. And
well, then everyone is running a server in their home and like,
and I don't know if
never going to happen.
That's actually how it worked. And it's definitely not the way that I want to go to.
If you think about it though, everyone now has a phone that is on all the time. So you could do that now where someone could have something that just runs on their phone and that could be like their server. It hasn't as much computing power as servers did in the 80s. So that's actually now you could do that now in a way you probably couldn't in the past.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not suggesting that we do that because that's a big task. But I want to get to the point where people do have the ability to just write some code, pay some money, pay some magic internet money that we now have that we didn't have way back in Web 1, and that was one of the main things that I think created an opportunity for Web 2 companies to come in and provide services. And that's why that Web 2 space blew up and grew so big with, VCs and everything. But I want to get to the point where we can just create some code and then throw it up into the cloud, but it's not a cloud that's owned by a big megacorp. It's a cloud that's permissionless. And that's what Dash Platform is trying to promise, at least in the database sense. It's not providing anything in the hosting sense, but that's where IPFS comes in. And so that's where, to bring this long preamble kind of back into what we're trying to accomplish here. That's what I want to accomplish, is to give people the opportunity to make decentralized applications that have data behind them and are hosted in a way that you don't have to create an account. You just have to pay some magic internet money, which today, the best magic internet money is Dash, objectively. Just kidding. Subjectively, but in many ways, objectively, depending on what your objects are. So let's get back into the screen sharing. Go ahead.
So here's what I'm going to do. I just cloned down their examples repository, and we're going to try and run their Next.js example and see if we can deploy it.
Who's they?
Helia's examples. Yeah, so I just showed you that quick little JavaScript snippet, but let me go back to showing you. Yes. I'm trying a new thing now where I only share individual tabs instead of my whole screen. So just
that's my screen, I think. You shared my screen.
Whoops. That makes sense. So as I was saying, I'm trying a new setup. So because I just want to share individual tabs instead of, that way it won't jump to like my desktop and things like that. And then I can jump between them like so. So these are, let me scroll up to here and here. And then I can also see my screen while still seeing you and me, which you can't do if you share your whole screen. So that always annoyed me about StreamYard. So now I'm trying this setup instead because it seems to work better.
The only bummer about this method is that people don't know what URL you're at. So maybe just when you're switching tabs.
That's a good point.
Tell people
I'm not going to be showing a lot of URLs. So for this case, I'm just going to do that. So this is where we are right now. If people are interested, we're just IPFS-examples/Helia-examples. And this will be the only link for now. So that shouldn't be a huge issue.
And I think maybe we can take some time to go over this real quick, because like this whole process of sharing screens and tabs in Windows, it maybe what you're looking for is the sharing windows part. you don't want to share your whole desktop, but you also don't want to share a tab. I think the window, sharing a window where you have one window, maybe you have multiple windows open.
You're
but you
100%
have
correct.
you have a window that's your sharing window. So that's what you want to do.
Ryan, this is why you're the man.
Thank you.
Okay, this is perfect. Great. So they got a whole bunch of framework examples here. This is awesome. This is exactly what we need. This is going to make it so freaking simple to make all of our stuff. Like these are most of the frameworks I've already built. We have Next, we have Vue, we have just a basic React example. So this is cool. This looks like this is a backend example. So I'll probably mess around with that. But right now, I just want to do the Next.js example. So
can you make your window a little wider, by the way? Because we got a lot of unused real estate right now.
Oh, I see. Okay, so actually, I'm about to switch to my editor. So let me do that, and then I'll make sure it's
actually
wide enough.
And then I'm going to try switching this view like this.
Like that, though, then it covers part of the screen, which I don't like.
Part of the screen. What if I drag?
Yeah. Well, so go back to where we just were. I think this is going to be wider. This will be fine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so that's perfect. We got the full screen.
Probably good.
And I'm going to increase this.
Okay.
And then let me hide this. Okay, I think that's perfect, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So you gotta do a build step first, looks like. And for people, this looks like very minimal, which is nice. It's just an index.js, and then an app file. Okay. Interesting. Next.
I'm still here, but I'm going to remove my.
Okay. And then.
Oh, apparently that removes my audio also. So I can't disappear.
Okay. Yeah, this really just doesn't work because I'm not gonna be able to switch in between this guy and my editor. So this is what we're just gonna do. Wait, what do I do?
Oh yeah, your editor. Yeah, unless you are doing like a browser-based editor, then probably. You're gonna have to share your screen. Yeah.
So something is happening with this example that I'm not entirely sure what. So maybe. Oh, okay. So some does come up, and then we got. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's how it works. So this is just a completely boilerplate Next.js project. This is basically what you get when you run create Next app. So what we would do is we would just take basically the code that is in our dash examples. Oops. So we got this Next app here, which has the fetching logic for the dash server. So let's see what happens. Just grab all this stuff. We're gonna have to probably install Tailwind as well. Or actually, I know what I'm gonna do. What's your familiarity with Next.js? If you ever actually, better question, what's your familiarity with React? If you ever written a React app?
I have, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I know Next.js enough to know that I hope that it doesn't take over the whole programming scene.
That's funny. Yeah, it's that ship's kind of sailed. So sorry.
Meaning you
Great.
think it already has taken over programming?
Well, I would say
Application
like,
development.
it's like the Beatles, like you got the Beatles, and it's like people always say the Beatles is the best rock band. They'll get like the most listeners. It's like, but there's still all this other music in the world. It's kind of that dynamic where if someone's gonna say like, I need to, and it does that sometimes, which is weird. When people are just saying, hey, I need to create an app or something, I need to use a framework, then the decision tree, they go React, and they're like, okay, React, what do I need for meta framework? Then it goes to Next.js. So it's like that's the first pick on the decision tree for people who don't want to think very hard about it. But
Yes, that's what I'm
there's
afraid of.
also well, yeah, but there's always going to be that. Like it was before, it was Ruby on Rails, before jQuery, before WordPress. Like this has existed for many different types of technologies, and I think its time will end at some point. And I don't know. I think Next is not the worst thing in the world. I like some stuff about it. I don't really personally use it a whole lot, but in the times I have used it, it hasn't been like as horrible as some people make it out to be. But I definitely tend to gravitate more towards other frameworks. Okay, so what I'm going to try and just do the simplest possible plug and play for this. And we're going to have to get our Express server running as well. So I'm going to want to clone this down. Actually, I'm realizing this is probably not going to actually work all the way unless I am able to run through the whole tutorial and kind of create the identity and whatnot. So for now, I'm going to just kind of get us to a point where I have most of the code in it. I can commit it, and then on the next stream, I'm going to actually like rerun through my tutorial. Because right before I published the tutorial, I wasn't testing. I was kind of acting up, and stuff was being weird. So for now, I'm just going to get us to a point where I can commit this.
Okay.
Yeah. How you doing there, boy? That's weird. Actually, I know why. I am they don't have a git ignore. Oh, rookie mistake, guys. Actually, I know why. It's not their fault. This is because this example exists in a monorepo of many examples with a giant git ignore at the bottom. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Okay. That's my boilerplate git ignore no modules.ds_store and .env. Okay. But then we also need the next and dist. And then I don't really want this stuff. Okay. That is all we need. Perfect. Okay. Okay, sweet.
Did they have did Helia have an SPA option?
So this basically is an SPA. It's just using Next, but if you just use Next without using any of the backend features, it's an SPA.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to drop the link for people who want it. There it is. So yeah, so I'm going to have to, because the question is going to be basically how do we want to manage the Express server, and that's kind of the challenge because that's the backend part. So what I may end up doing is kind of set it up to where you don't need to save your actual keys in like a .env that's being used in a server, which is the current case. What I think I might do instead, at least if we want to just do this for the demo and for the tutorials, we can have it give you the ability to create the wallet from the front end, and then that wallet then gets just saved in state, and you can obviously it'll display it, you can save it yourself, and then you could use that to get to the point of creating the identity, and then you can kind of show the identity, and then it's kind of can function where people can log into it with their wallet, and then we wouldn't have to actually save stuff in a server with the keys anywhere. I think that's probably what we want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to start with a static, just a static file hosting instead of relying on a server, because I think that's the most straightforward way. And we can, like the idea that I had was we would start with that and we would figure out through the process what the security implications are and whether we need, do we need a wallet extension for it to work? Do we need to because applications, applications that use Dash platform, they're going to need that identity, and that identity is typically derived from, it's derived from a 12-word phrase. Like that's the 12-word phrase is
that's the password. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's the ultimate authentication is your 12.
And anyone who's used MetaMask knows this. Anyone who's used most crypto wallets knows this. This is not a Dash thing, not a Dash specific thing. This is very, very common.
Yeah, and so that's why most people reach for wallet extensions. Now we have Ash. Ash is the one in the incubator that is spearheading the wallet extension thing. But
so let's step back. There's two things here. There's one, like the tutorial is meant to be a learning tool, a way to show people how to learn things. It's not necessarily meant to be a way to eventually arrive at like an application that is like has a specific kind of functionality that provides value to a user. So we need to think about what are we trying to do here with IPFS? What are we trying to build? Are we trying to just build an extension to the tutorial that gives you an example of how to work with IPFS? Or are we trying to use IPFS to build an actual Dash product that people are going to do useful Dash-like things with? Yeah. I do think that's an important distinction to make.
Yeah. And it's both. That's why, like, going into this, I was thinking about what we were trying to accomplish. And I think that it's a bit of an iterative process. We want the tutorial or a separate tutorial to show people how to make actual real life Dash
ideally that's usually where you have starters. Then like you have quick starts, you have repos people can clone down, and there doesn't need to be like this long explanation of it and how to get to it and how to build it out piece by piece. So the way I tend to think of it is like you have a tutorial should be something that starts from zero. Like you have no code, you have a blank file, and it's like you go from there and you add piece by piece until you arrive at something that is considered somewhat complete. Mm-hmm. And then for people who have an idea like I want to build a decentralized exchange. I want people to be able to exchange Dash for other coins, or I want people to be able to stake
We're
things for
definitely not going to
whatever.
go that far right away. I think the minimum viable application, like real world application, is like a personal blog, right? A decentralized.
Well, that's the Redwood tutorial.
Big deal.
That's the Redwood tutorial. So that's cool. I like that because it is one sense it can be seen as useful to a dev.
Yep.
How Dash factors into that is the question though, because if we're using IPFS could just host markdown files. So what is the point of Dash, and how would it make sense to even put blog posts as storage in Dash?
Yeah, so a blog is kind of in between. I understand that IPFS does. You are able to create your own blog using IPFS, and so maybe that's not the best example as a real world application where Dash Platform would excel and IPFS isn't good enough. Where Dash Platform excels more is when you have structured data where you need to query structured data, like create and
say
query
more about
structured data.
Say more about structured data. This is important to dig into. This can help me come up with an idea.
Right. So let's compare it and contrast it with a blog. A blog is more or less one file, right? You have a markdown file, and that
it
markdown
turns into
file,
an HTML file that makes sense to a browser, which is why you're allowed to do all this stuff just within the bounds of a single HTML file, because the browser does so much. Where structured data is like rows in a database, right? Yes. Or fields of a JSON blob.
Right. So would you you wouldn't necessarily have to store your blog in a database, right? You could store your blog in markdown files, right? But the second that you try to that your application needs to have data in a database, that's where Dash Platform starts to come in. So the only reason that I suggested a blog is because it is kind of that middle ground that's a little bit easier to actually accomplish, even though it might not be the best example because you have alternatives like IPFS that could do similar things.
Well, now I'm thinking, so I just had this idea where when I have this thing that I've been building out myself, the show note generator, and one step along the way that I used to have in there but ended up getting thrown out is that with YTDLP, you can actually take like the sum total of the metadata in your YouTube videos and get it like a JSON blob. So what I'm thinking of, we could build a Incubator Weekly, a website for the Incubator Weekly YouTube page where all of the metadata is stored as Dash metadata, and then that can basically be queried on a front end that can then display it however you want, and then people can like go to the videos and they can easily work with like links and do all sorts of stuff. And then that would be using Dash as the backend because it's really just mostly pulling information from a big JSON blob, and then we would only need to host the actual front end on IPFS, which would be the React app, which would be querying the Dash backend.
That's a good example of something that would require structured data, but the front end, the application on the front end is just a single page application.
Because then what's cool is every time you publish a video, as long as you had your stuff set up correctly, it automatically creates a new page on the website.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Another example that is near and dear to my heart is like a global merchant directory of sites that say accept different cryptocurrencies. And that's a huge project. I know that like that's one of the things that Dash Incubator was even created for, is to create something like that, and using structured data as your database.
If you want to scope that out and kind of write out some of the steps and the ideas of that, we could possibly take that on at some point.
Yeah, that is something that we Yeah, that's an application that we could take on. I think that is a little bit too big of a project to
Right.
do for this particular
But like we said,
tutorial
we're
or
trying to
quick
get
start.
somewhere. I would like to get somewhere where once we have a good handle on all this stuff and have good examples and good docs, and we can start then building the actual useful stuff. So that would be good is if we actually start getting, if I can start helping you get actual products out, you know?
Yeah. Another example is the obvious Twitter clone where your data, I mean, I don't know how much business sense it makes right now because
I feel
there
like
are,
2023 was the year of the Twitter clone. So it's going to be hard
yeah,
to actually get people excited about that. But
it's
I
not
think that
something,
I do think it's good
necessarily
as
that I
a
would want to
example.
build in terms of a product that we would want to really throw marketing behind.
But there's actually a famous tutorial for Ruby on Rails that builds Twitter with Ruby on Rails, and
Yeah.
that's, I think people seem to find that to be, because it's big enough but scoped enough, and so that it makes sense enough to people. Actually, another one I thought of was the Burning Monk. There's this dude's who is like an AWS expert. He has a hard to pronounce name, so I don't want to mess it up right now. But he did a giant AWS like app sync kind of tutorial for Twitter as well. So I do think there is a value to having some sort of demo kind of like that. So
yeah, it doesn't have to have a real world product market fit necessarily. You're not trying to take over X or Twitter. But what it does is it gives people something they already understand. People already understand the idea of posts and comments on posts and reactions to posts and things like that. And so it can provide that. Or decentralized Reddit might even be easier because that's just like nested comments all the way down. Like somebody has an original post, and then there's comments on that post, and there are comments on that comment.
Well, that's also like Hacker News, right? And like Hacker News, that's Ryan Carniato. Like that is his example. He builds Hacker News in every single framework, and that's what he did for like 2 years on his stream with every other framework author. So I like that. I would like to do a kind of Dash, kind of like Reddit Hacker News type thing. That's a really good idea. Okay, now these are all good ideas. So
lots of ideas. I think that the merchant thing is too complex and not relatable enough for the average developer. I think Hacker News clone might be exactly the right. It's not as simple as a blog because it's interactive. Like many different people can comment on different things, and so it fits that bill of like, yeah, you kind of do need something like Dash Platform for this. It's not something you could really accomplish through. I mean, I guess you could accomplish it through IPFS, but I don't know how well that would perform, how the IPFS thing would perform, because I don't know how well they do secondary indexes and things like that, which is kind of what Dash Platform is designed for. It's designed not only for having a place to throw data, but also a place to put indexes on secondary indexes on data. So, and that's what Hacker News, I think, would give you. Like, give me all the users, or give me all the posts by a certain user, or give me all the comments by a certain post, or give me all the comments by a certain user. That kind of structure. That's what I'm talking about when I say structured data. Is there are relationships between data, not just as simple as a single markdown file.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. I think we can probably start wrapping it up here because I'm gonna want to do kind of some more research and then set up the next stream. What I want to do is start having just like a weekly cadence for like when I have projects like this. So I'm gonna keep doing this at Wednesdays at this time. You're welcome to join or not, and then, or you can just watch them afterwards, or you can hang out in the chat and do whatever. And the first thing I'll probably start with is, like we first talked about, is creating something that can work with the current tutorial, and then I'll start playing around with one of these ideas that we just kind of went over. I'll go back and watch this video and write them all down and get them in like some sort of format for us when we start logging these things.
Yeah. So to recap, to recap what I'm trying to accomplish is we have our tutorial, we have your tutorial that you wrote, and it gives people a good introduction to the ideas of identities and names, contracts, documents. It gives like wallets, it gives people a good idea of all of those core fundamental concepts.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get people to the point where they have a deployed example of why would I use this? And so that's the gap that I'm trying to fill with this new project, is to maybe extend, maybe alter the existing tutorial so that it's more of a real world example that actually gets deployed, or make it a completely separate, different example application. So maybe you have the tutorial and then you have a separate example after you've done the tutorial and you have interacted with Dash platform, you know the concepts. Now start a different tutorial.
I think I'm just gonna do a part 2 and just like work from there. 'Cause I can see a lot of ways where we can go from where we ended up.
The part 2 meaning a separate tutorial,
exactly. That would be around the same, because my big problem was why I didn't make the tutorial longer, because it was already so long, and I didn't want. I could have made it twice as long, but like we were talking about this last time, so we need to do just a part 2, and just like all these ideas will go in part 2. And that's totally fine, because I think all the stuff that's in part 1 is valuable and important. And
it's educational.
For people to learn. Yeah.
Part 1 is fundamental, core concept, primitive, educational things.
Yeah.
Part 2 is
as you're going through part 2, you'll be able to reference. So that's why it's useful to have it there. And a lot of the stuff obviously is in the docs actually as well. But this is going to give people more of a, like you're saying, a final kind of thing. But I think it probably makes more sense at this point, because of how long the first one is, to make it a part 2.
Yeah. And so that's what I kind of needed to talk through with you. I didn't have the answer, but I think we're arriving at the answer is that we will keep the original tutorial as its own standalone thing. It's educational content. Then we have a separate thing that's, okay, now you know the core concepts. Let's apply that into a specific example and have you start from zero, but knowing the core concept.
Because the Redwood tutorial, just for example, the Redwood tutorial had 4 big chunks that were each about the size of my first tutorial, and the 4th chunk is where the deployment came in. So that's just to give you an example, like how much you can cover before you, like, just in terms of concepts, if you're really working with like a substantial and large enough project with enough functionality.
Yep. Yeah. So I like that we kind of arrived at the Hacker News things. I think that's something that so many people watch Rion Carniato's streams, developers anyway.
No, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Maybe just, exactly. Just bring that in. The only difference would be that, like with Ryan's examples, he's actually pulling data from actual Hacker News.
API. Whereas this is going to actually be something that you want people to have the functionality to write to Dash platform to create things that are the equivalent of the Hacker News things. So that maybe is more complicated, but interesting, and I think doable.
Yeah, and maybe what we would do is we would use the part of the application could contact Hacker News to get data, but then we would dump that data into Dash platform, and then we would basically show, like, the purpose of that isn't to say we just want to clone Hacker News, but that's just seeding the data. That's just a way to seed the data, the structured data, to get back to that previous discussion. We get a bunch of data seeded from Hacker News, and then we dump that into Dash platform in a way that maybe we might even have to create, like, the process might involve creating an array of users. Like, you get the data from Hacker News, and maybe the front page has, do his examples just have, well, it doesn't matter.
So what he does is he hits like a Firebase. There's an API that's just hosted on Firebase that is like the Hacker News API, or someone who's hosting some sort of like mirror to it. So you just are accessing an API that gives you the last like 50 or 100 or however many, because he paginates it. So you just go through the pagination.
So we probably wouldn't go so far as to have pagination. But what we would do is we would have the API call Hacker News to get the first 50 posts or whatever its default is, use that to seed data, and maybe even seeding users as well, so that you get the idea that, okay, you can have 10 different users, and each maybe one user has 2 posts and another user has 1 post, and so forth, and then there are different comments. So I'm not exactly sure how we would do that, but we would want to demonstrate the idea of Dash Platform gives you the opportunity to make structured data sets and give you the ability to write to Dash Platform, and in addition to reading from it.
So you want to arrive at the concept of having users which have posts and posts which have comments and all those relations. Again, this is why I'm so glad I have fully internalized the Redwood tutorial, because these are all the things that the Redwood tutorial goes through. So a lot of these concepts are things that you just kind of build out piece by piece, step by step.
Okay. Well, I think that's good enough for today. We've done a pretty good planning session, brainstorming session. I would like to, if you're able to, I would like to have these more common than once a week, because I think
How about
once
twice
a week is probably not enough to have continuity. But
we'll talk also with the idea that I would code things in between off, so that there'd be more work being done kind of in between. But I could do 2 a week. And then we can kind of see if you want to increase the cadence after a week or 2.
Yeah. So I don't know if Wednesday works well for you, but to me, like a Tuesday, Thursday cadence would be perfect for me. We'll talk about that offline. We'll get something. I think twice a week is good. And I would like to get, so separate idea. I would like to start getting people to try the tutorial out as well. And if we did that.
No, I know. And I already sent messages to people. I'm working on that in the background.
Yeah. We would have that maybe on separate days, or if you wanted to line things up for both of us to be there, or just you or just me, that's fine too. We'll figure all that out.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to, I'd love to have you there just to provide more color and, especially just Dash experience, having been in the community for so long. You can really speak to it more legitimately than I can, and be kind of an intermediary there. So I think that's great. I've already got a couple of my friends who are streamer people who are thinking about it, and I've got a couple people who aren't really big streamers but are really good just developers who I think would be able to just give us good input in terms of what we've got.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I think we'll call it quits here today, and we'll make some more progress next time.
All right. Catch you guys next time.